So, good morning once again, dear Thai, dear Sangha. We're in the Stillwater Hall, Upper Hamlet. Today is the Sunday, the 1st of October, 2017. This morning's talk will cover, hopefully, some useful aspects of basic practice for us. I'll also, in particular, as I was preparing the talk, the aspect of letting go came up, so I hope we'll go into that subject. Actually, yesterday evening, as my roommates, Duktri is over there, will testify, I was a little bit anxious about this morning's talk and what I might share, and I tried to sit down with my book and write lots of ideas down, but it's actually sometimes the residence is always a very happy place, the monastic residence, but it's not always the quietest place. And I couldn't get, I don't have a hut of my own yet. so I went for a walk, and it turned out to be a good thing to do. It's amazing how sometimes just to go for a walk by ourselves can really be so beneficial, something so simple. And I think just in that, saying that's a key teaching, that it's the simple things that can really help us, but we have to do them and really, to put our heart into them. So I went for my walk. I ended up going through some fields and towards Puigilem, and I tried my best to invest myself 100% in my steps, but my mind was very busy and difficult but I was already at the very outset, being outside with the sun still out. It was dusk. I was immediately feeling refreshed and in touch with the beauty of the nature and the sky and the sun. And I walked through the little foresty area, came down the hill, and I came to a field, and a big open field on the left, and a wild boar came out right in front of me, and I was treated to the spectacular event of this boar running like so fast across this massive field, and it was quite magnificent to see this wild animal. I'm always touched by wildness, like to see this animal. And I just watched as it ran and ran. So that was it felt like my first thought was, wow, what a gift to see a boar like that. And it took me completely away from any concerns, to see that. And then I also had the sad thought that this boar saw it necessary to run very, very fast away from me across the fields, and probably for very good reason, that they're frightened of human beings. Probably if it didn't run, I would have run though. I would be frightened of a boar that wasn't frightened of me. Just occurs to me. So I continue my walk through the vineyards, and I got to the Puigilem road. I started going up, and a car came up this very narrow road. So I stepped off to the side, and it was going so fast. I thought it almost felt violent, you know. But I thought, well, sometimes I drive fast too. He doesn't know that I'm trying to have a peaceful walk, you know, and he's probably looking forward to getting back to his family or something. So I forgave the person in the car for disturbing my peaceful walk. And then I went back to my thinking about the Dharma talk in the morning. And I was locked in. And as I gradually walked up the hill, I stopped and I just looked back from where I came, and I noticed that there was this corner of the field, because most of it's agriculture. It's either vineyards or being ploughed at the moment. But there was this corner that had been left alone. And it was, what was growing up there was like lots of flowers, bouquets of purples and mauves, some blue flowers and white flowers. It looked like it had been arranged, you know. It was so beautiful. In fact, I encourage you, it's not very far. You go and, yeah, but just mind the cars, huh? But just this corner of this field had been allowed to just grow naturally, and nature is so wonderful when it's just allowed to do its own thing, you know. And it produces so much beauty. And I thought, wow, I was going to miss that because of my thinking about, you know, my thinking mind. And I completely hadn't I'd walked past it without even noticing. That's how mindful I was. And so it was looking back that I saw it, and I went back to this corner of the field, and I stood there for some minutes enjoying the beauty of the flowers and the green grasses. And there was a solitary bumblebee dipping into flowers here and there, making some sort of pilgrimage among all of these flower heads. It was very, very nice. And I thought, wow, a bee found this place, because it seems there's not many places for the bees to find their pollen anymore. Did you know that for 1 kilogram of honey, the bees that make that honey travel the distance that it would be 3 times around the planet Earth? I was told that. I read that. So you can check that if you want. So we have to have a lot of admiration for the bees. And we do know that there's also some sadness to know that the bee population is going down very dramatically, and partly because of all of the agrochemicals and things like that. So I continued my walk, and I went up to the church and met some people. I came back down, and by the time I got back past the field and was just in the little forest bit, again, bit wild and about to come up the field, I stopped. Stopped stock still, just completely, felt my feet on the ground. And I just allowed myself to relax my body and really stop in myself, really come back and arrive into my body and touch stillness, touch kind of the silence. And it seemed that the forest was very silent, and even the noise of me walking seemed loud compared to, I wasn't very noisy, but suddenly just to really stop and touch silence, it was so precious. And gradually, as I stood there for some minutes, and it was getting darker, I started to hear the animals moving around in the foliage and the bush area. It was such a sacred moment. And I realized also that there was this sense of when we truly stop and we are able to, like in meditation, because it was kind of meditation, we touch silence, but then if we stay still, so that like in this case, in nature, like so the animals don't know you're there, and then they start to relax, because there's no longer a human being there, and they start to come out and play and do their thing, so you can start hearing them rustling around. So I just stayed very still and enjoyed the natural sounds of the forest and the animals coming out. And I think it's a bit like, it's a bit like that in meditation. We can get very still, and then it actually allows space for things to come up for us. And we just stay still, and we observe, and we can smile. And for me, also it was sometimes we have that sense of we've been away a little bit too long from ourselves, and we come back and we say, oh yes, this place in me, So just gently coming back into ourself, touching what is real, what is true, what is going on for us. And if we keep doing that, it's what I would call gentle diligence, to keep coming back. There was somebody from the Irish Sangha last week that got the name for their 5 mindfulness trainings, gentle diligence of the heart. It's this aspect of, yes, keep practicing, but with this gentle aspect, just coming back, touching what is there, being, and I was aware of my body also like an animal. I think Mary Oliver uses, the soft animal that we are in her poetry. So I was an animal of the forest for a little while, a visitor, and stopping in the woods and enjoying the night sky and enjoying coming back to myself and being in my body and noticing my mind quietening down. And there was also this sense of a welcoming in me, like, welcome back. But not judgment, like, oh, you've abandoned me, where have you been? You've been away too long and you're a bad practitioner. It wasn't like that. It was just a welcoming feeling, like unconditional love was there for me, for myself. Like, okay, you're back, wonderful. And yeah, no blaming. And then I enjoyed walking back to the residence and picking my way through along the path in the dark. And yeah, another thing that was special about that little walk was realizing that I could trust my feet, because it was dark and the paths were narrow and it was rocky, but just trusting my feet and finding my way, and occasionally would be stumbling, but my feet intelligently knew what to do. And so even it was dark, it was quite peacefully finding my way back through the forest. So I had a nice walk. And we can all do such a simple thing for ourselves. We don't need any special reason to, but it can be very, very beneficial. Sound of the bell. So how wonderful to stop. And just come back to what is going on for ourselves, and be there for ourselves. It's a wonderful homecoming. That's what, yeah. And this is to pay attention, to have many moments of stopping in the day, is part of what this environment of Plum Village can offer us, and we can benefit from. If when you hear the bells you feel interrupted, you can let go of that irritation. I was interrupted in the middle of something, and say, oh no, this is an opportunity to really stop and put down, let go, and arrive back in the present moment with myself. Let go of whatever it is, I can pick it back up again if I need to, but right now just completely let go. And let go into the mindful breathing. Yeah. We have poems that we are to learn when we're novices. I don't think I learned all of them, but they're very precious. The idea of these poems is to bring what could be just a mundane, meaningless action in the daily life into true life, and into a kind of very meaningful experience, making it, if you like, even holy. And giving us a sense of reverence for life. So for instance, the Gatha about water is very beautiful. When we turn on the tap, water flows over these hands. May I use them skillfully to preserve this precious planet. And another one for water is water comes from high in the mountains. Water comes to us from deep in the earth. How miraculous. It's sustaining all life. My gratitude is filled to the brim. How miraculous water comes to us, sustaining all life, and my gratitude is filled to the brim. This is a very lovely phrase, and when we're in touch with water, and we're in touch with the miracle, we can be in touch with that miracle, and in touch with that gratitude to have water available to us, clean water. I was recently in England, in where I grew up in Yorkshire, and we were there. One of the things that we were doing was that we had a weekend retreat to be with a group of people that call themselves earth protectors, and they are trying to protect the water and the land and the air from the polluting effects of the fracking industry. And we were there to offer the practice to help them, because it can be quite emotional. And there can be resentment and anger built up. And I feel a lot of conflict, a feeling of confrontation. So we were there to offer the practice to help them be calm and also stay in touch with their peace, even while resisting, even while offering their presence to this situation, to be a voice for Mother Nature and for the communities around. And truly, when I remember that Gata, I think of what they're doing, and I'm very grateful, because it takes millions of years to have something so precious as clean water, for not just for us to drink, but for the whole of the ecology to live, and has grown up with needed. That's a needed element for nature, for ecology. So we need to protect our water. So as we cultivate mindfulness throughout the day, with the stopping and maybe with the help of the gathas, we can generate an energy which can be really be a source of happiness for us. And it can, like for instance with the water, it can put us in touch with gratitude and help us connect with our happiness again. Can put us in touch with the good conditions that we have, the people around us. And with awareness and mindfulness energy, also if we know that we have a lot of tension or we're worrying about something, it can help us to become aware of what our state is, how we are, in such a way that we can take care and relax. Because if we're we can be in a state of tension but not know it. Or we kind of know it, but we're just driving through anyway. So to stop and to pay attention and to be in touch with, we can bring refreshing breath energy back in, and we can relax and release tension, let go. There's many teachings of the Buddha where the aspect of letting go is brought in. In the Sutra on the Full Awareness of Breathing, for instance, in one version it's the very last of the exercises, the 16 exercises. So the first begins with simply becoming aware of the breathing, and the last is letting go. But in fact, the aspect of letting go should be in the very first one also. It should be in the awareness of the breathing. So letting go is a kind of attitude we can have to the way we are practicing our mindfulness. It means not controlling, not trying to make things different to what they are. Not saying, well, sometimes we have an idea of our practice, of how it should be. And we've been practicing a long time now, so our practice should be like this. And we have to let go of that imposing idea of what we think, how we think we should be, and be really courageous to be honest and say, no, well, how am I? And how is my breathing right now? And to just be able to, so letting go, first of all, of this imposition of what we think it should be like, what we want it to be like, to be in touch with what truly is, and then allowing that to be what it is, allowing ourselves to be just how we are in that moment. And that is a kind of letting go. Yeah? And if we notice as we're breathing, we're controlling the breathing, well, first of all, you don't have to be judging of that. You just reckon, oh, I'm controlling my breathing. I'm being like that. Or the main thing is to notice what's going on. And then, just aware of that, the energy of mindfulness naturally has this capacity to just soften and allow things to come back to their natural state. So we can trust that, just being aware, and gradually things will come to their natural way, into their natural rhythm. So when we practice mindfulness of the breathing, we can bring that that awareness and allowing ourselves to let go into what is really how we really are, allowing the breath to be natural. Just to enjoy a few breaths like that. in touch with the in-breath and the out-breath, we can already be in touch with a very basic miracle that we are alive. And this insight that we are alive can be very powerful. Actually, it's like, wow, I'm actually alive. You know, when you really are in touch with that. And when we're in touch with that, we're also in touch with how precious is this life. How precious is this life? And we look back and we think sometimes we'd had enough, and we think, wow, I'm so glad I'm still alive. I didn't give up. So I want to put up, I mentioned the 7 factors of awakening, sometimes called enlightenment. How many of you want to get enlightened? Okay. Say, enlightened about what? Well, if you do, then you want to check, how are these 7 factors working for you? How are they? What is the status of these 7 factors in you? The first one is mindfulness. So we've talked about generating mindfulness of the body, of the breathing, being aware just how we are, what is our mental state as well. You know, are we in an anxious place? Are we in an expansive place? You know, we just become aware, and we cultivate this mindfulness through the day. In this environment, we stop often, and we can practice walking meditation, as well as walking to Puy Guilhem. We can walk just from here to the bathroom with the same mindfulness and letting go and being present, being really in this moment and experiencing the journey, you know, the grass along the way, the trees, and the beauty of Plum Village, of Upper Hamlet. Hopefully you'll enjoy doing that today. And mindfulness has this capacity to recognize and to embrace our suffering, and also can lead us to understanding. So the second of the factors is investigation. We can look into what is going on in order to understand, in order to get the insight. There's an aspect of that I like to share, of curiosity, becoming curious about what is there. The third one is diligence, or energy sometimes. Sometimes termed energy. So I mentioned about gentle diligence. Just keep coming back and nurturing this mindfulness, this stopping, this coming back to what is, and taking care of the suffering, if we find it, be it anxiety or sadness, with our mindfulness, means simply to breathe with it, to not chase it away, but just to recognize and accept, to smile to what is there. So mindfulness also already contains in it the aspect of compassion and love, that it would be able to smile and include what is there. The fourth one is joy. So even if there is suffering, when we have the practice and we're able to be with what is, and we have the energy, I'll put energy up because it's an important word. We do need energy to be able to embrace what is. And we get that through the continuous practice. We build up that kind of energy. And then we have the capacity to be with what is, even if there's some suffering. And we have the capacity to investigate and find out what is going on. So we can also find a way out, find the remedy, find the medicine we need. This is the medicine, but it's also finding the way. So when we touch a kind of joy that is, we have a path, yeah. We've built up some energy. And then there is also, the joy that comes from just being, when we get that touched by beauty and touched by nature and the preciousness of this life, natural gratitude, if we're cultivating that, like with the garters on water, if we're cultivating that, it comes to us. There's a book by C.S. Lewis, and the title of the book is Surprised by Joy. I just love the title. I haven't read the book. I think he's a Christian, so it's probably about finding Jesus, which is fine. But just in this context, I like the title Surprised by Joy, because it has this. That joy is there, available to us naturally, and we don't. And just by practicing, we can have that experience of being surprised by joy. And interesting that we need joy for our awakening. So it's included as a factor of awakening. It's not just a throwaway, you don't really need joy, you just need the awakening. Actually, you need the joy. Because it also represents this gratitude and this connection with life. And joy is also an element of true love. Yeah? One of the Brahma Viharas, one of the beautiful states of mind that we can cultivate. And number 5 is sometimes tranquility, and Thai likes to use the term ease. Our teacher uses the word ease, or calm and ease, like in the song, calm, ease, smile, release. Yeah? And I remember Thai is quoted that ease always goes along with diligence. Because when we think of diligence, we think of effort. And sometimes it's termed the right effort. So there's a kind of, But in the kind of effort we're talking about has ease in it. So it's remembering to relax, remembering to come back gently to yourself is the diligence. It is the effort. The effort of switching from the habit of driving and pushing yourself, getting things done, to relaxing into and being present with and taking things in, getting into the natural rhythm of yourself and being present. So when we do working meditation in Plum Village, and you're encouraged to take part in some Sangha service, you're encouraged to do it in such a way that you're at ease in your body. And that might mean stopping every now and then and noticing your habit energy of working to get something done, and that kind of pushing energy in you. So the effort we're talking about, the diligence, is to come back to this place of ease and joy and gratitude. Number 6 is concentration. When we continually practice, when we practice often, we find, I'm practicing, and then for the next 10 minutes of the walking meditation, our mind was off and on the project or something. So coming back is the diligence to keep coming back. And then there's a certain point where naturally you're in the flow, you're with the walking, and you don't have to make the effort anymore. It's you. So you could say that's a kind of concentration. You've developed this continuity of your practice. But there's also specific concentrations that are suggested in the Buddhist teachings. And there's a book that's just recently out called The Art of Living by Thai, which is recommended. But it's based on Thai's teachings the last few years before he had the stroke, and particularly from one of the June retreat and the what happens when I die question. What happens when I'm alive is the better question. It should be the first question, but we all want to know what happens when we die first. Right? But in that those teachings, Thai presents some of the concentrations that are useful, the focus of where we put our attention, if you like, how we apply our investigation. And the concentrations, they're roughly 3 doors of liberation. So I'm not going to go into all of these now. 3 doors of liberation. Which is emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness. Everybody likes the aimlessness one. Don't have to do anything. Yeah, just let it go. Yeah. Or they complain about that one. They say, "But you've got to have an aim in life. Got to do something with your life." But the aimlessness one is a lovely one. But it's about a concentration where you constantly don't put anything in front of yourself for your happiness, but you just be content with what is right now. Accepting again. And there's another 4 concentrations, which are actually part of the last 4 exercises of the Anapanasati Sutra. And one of them, I'm not going to mention all of them, you can read the book. One of them is letting go. And number 7 of the factors of awakening is letting go. I am purposely, there's many words, sometimes chosen for the different things, so I'm just giving one version. And there's the Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Pali, but this is just to keep it simple. But letting go, as a practice, and as I described as a sort of attitude, is one of the. It's considered in a way like the culmination, like the last stage. You sort of let go, and you get completely liberated. But in fact, it's also just one other of the factors of awakening. So it's the aspect of letting go should be in, as I said, in our mindfulness right at the beginning. letting go also comes into, as I mentioned, the Brahma Viharas. Classically, there are 4 Brahma Viharas, right? Friendship, compassion. So friendship is often, you'll have heard of loving kindness. Thai likes the expression friendship, brotherhood, sisterhood. Compassion, joy, which we have here, and letting go, or sometimes termed inclusiveness. So how do you get from letting go to the word inclusiveness? I was contemplating, right? And essentially, there's another word used for this aspect of true love, which is non-discrimination. So when you don't discriminate and you don't exclude, be it something going on in you or other people, so you practice you're not discriminating, that means you're including, you have this aspect of inclusiveness. So you're letting go of your prejudice, letting go of your aversion or your attachment to somebody or something going on in you, and just letting it be as it is. You're not rejecting it, and you're not clinging to it. So there's this aspect in letting go of neither rejecting nor clinging, but just letting it be. So like the Beatles song, let it be. So when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary said to me, so, as an aspect of letting go it's an act of love. To let go as an act of love. To let go, for instance, of maybe sometimes we're called upon to let go of somebody for them to be free. You know, we want to keep them in our life, or maybe in a relationship, or maybe they're needing to pass on. They're holding on because they know we can't let go of them, and they're waiting for us to let go, and then they can let go. There's many people who have experienced like that. So letting go can sometimes be an act of love, that kind of letting go. And also, supposing we have a resentment towards somebody, to let go of that resentment would be a kind of an act of love. You could say forgiveness. But exactly how we do that is not always that easy to just say, I let go. Yeah. But nevertheless, we could see that it would be a loving thing to do. And for ourselves too, because that's the other side of it, is that when we have a resentment, we are actually the first one that suffers. Have you ever noticed that? Or, yeah, the feeling that your resentment is actually making you happy, you need to question that. But it's amazing how we are attached to our resentment. We feel like, no, don't touch that, that's my resentment. I'm keeping this. It's not so obvious. So things that we, so I'm moving now to things that we might want to let go of, things that we are entangled with. So I've mentioned a few. Does anybody, I'll just check you're awake. Anybody want to offer some suggestions? Things that you would like to let go of but maybe you're having a problem with, or things that you think would be, you've had an experience it's good to let go of.
Objects, things.
Things, material things. So making life, so the happiness born from that is that you have more simple, things less complicated, yeah? So there's a happiness born from the simplicity when you let go of material things, perhaps. Okay? Yeah. Worries and fear? What happens when you let go of worries and fear? More ease. So you get one of the factors of awakening then. Yeah. Any more? Yeah.
Wanting things to be different in society, like social justice.
Okay. So you want to let go of that?
I know I should do, but it's hard.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. Vanessa, how would you answer that? To say how we keep hold of the goodness of wanting social justice, but letting go of the suffering that is connected with that. Desires as well. So I'm just sticking in my mind with this one. I think so we're talking about when we get entangled with causes, if you like. And I think what we need some insight. So I'm going to come back to that one. But you mentioned desires. So that's when we're caught in a desire, yeah. So recently somebody said that they were caught in, a young man caught in habit energy which he saw was very destructive for himself, concerning the third mindfulness training. So it's about his sexual energy, sexual desires. And basically, what I offered him was, again, is not to get into the judgment about himself, because he felt very ashamed, but to find an alternative source to identify what the real need was behind it, and get the wholesome nourishment. So, going to spending time in nature and nourishing your senses with beautiful things can be very helpful for letting go of desires, which in the end, the object of our desire doesn't bring us the happiness, that doesn't fulfill the need. And that is an insight in itself, to recognize that the object of the desire, that getting that doesn't actually bring about the desired effect. So and that, again, insight can really help us let go, because if we have the insight that the object of desire is not going to, and this connects with something nice to mention, is when we have an idea of happiness. When we have an idea of happiness, and that very idea of happiness, because we're attached to it, is preventing us to experience happiness. Can you identify... Can you identify in yourself where you have something, if I get this, then I'll be happy. It could be a PhD, it could be a car, it could be a wife, children, I don't know. But maybe something very, that you think, yeah, then I'll be happy. And that can be the exact thing that's stopping you touch happiness in the present moment. And it's not necessarily that it's wrong to, try and create the conditions for that to arise. But when you do it in such a way that you lose your happiness in the present moment, then it's a problem. So that is why also we have the concentration on aimlessness to help us be satisfied and to recognize the good conditions we have now, and stop putting things in front of us for our happiness. So that is also connected with letting go of desire. Okay? So I mentioned resentments. Of course, along with that goes anger, hatred, you name it. I share a little story. So a woman came to me for a consultation, a 4-minute consultation. She said, I just need 4 minutes. And I always think, oh my gosh, I know it's not going to be 4 minutes. Yeah. And she said, no, she was very sure it was just going to take 4 minutes because I'd actually given a talk on the subject of letting go. And I said, I just wonder, does this also apply to letting go of the resentment I have towards my mother? I said, yes, it can. Okay, good. Okay, well, I don't think I can do that. But anyway, thank you. So it applies. Yeah. Okay. And I sensed, I said, look, why don't we sit down, And then she told me about the story of her mother, and actually she was carrying this resentment and anger towards her mother for 40 years after her mother had died. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or was it 20? Am I exaggerating? It was something like that. I remember I was quite stunned. It was like a long time after. But she was an older woman. Could have been 40. Anyway, not relevant. It was a long time. She was holding resentment towards her mother. And she could not let go, and didn't see how, was trying to work out how the teaching applied to this. And basically what happened was, in that case, I listened to her sharing her story about why she had the resentment, like what had happened when she was, and it all went back to when she was 6 years old, of course. Not of course, but often it goes to childhood, these things, and it built up from there, so something had happened, felt abandoned, left alone, and it was a real story, I felt for her. I felt for the 6-year-old girl, and but here she was, a much older woman, and she was still caught in this place of suffering and resentment. So, what I ended up doing, kind of spontaneously, was beginning anew with her. We have a practice of beginning anew where one thing is you express your appreciation for the person, and you also express your regret. And I shared as if I was her mother, who died many years ago. And I said, if I could go back with the view that I have as your mother now, I would only want to not have left you in that situation. I would want, you're so precious, you were just a little girl, and you were wonderful, and you fully deserved all the my mother's the love that I should give you as a mother, and there was nothing wrong with you, So I expressed these things as her mother, and how much regret I had for the suffering that had caused. And just as soon as she somehow let it in, she allowed it to come in as if it was her mother expressing regret and expressing her love for her as her daughter from when she was a baby, a girl until now, and how much she appreciated her. And she said, "Oh, I feel incredible relief just to have heard that." And then, because she was a very practical, she was a very honest woman, I have to say. She was very straightforward. She said, "Now I am in touch with my own regret that I kept that resentment for 40 years. I will say 40 years is my memory. That I kept that resentment all this time. For what? Just so that I could hear my mother saying what I could have guessed was in her heart, but even she couldn't say it because she was blocked with her own suffering, and she didn't have the skill to see that that's what I need to say. That's because many times parents they are still caught in their story, and they are caught in their own guilt about what they did, and so they have a story to justify it, right? But if they could do the work to see clearly what had happened, they could get beyond that guilt complex, they would definitely share their appreciation and their regret for the suffering they caused. And so she got that, and then it allowed her to be in touch with her regret for holding the resentment for so long. And it was so simple, so quick. It was kind of bizarre because you've been holding a resentment for so long, and then you just let it go like that. So the letting go is not necessarily a huge, long process. It's just finding the right key sometimes. And getting the right insight. Sometimes we have, and there are other insights that I've found beneficial for letting go. And that is, if you're suffering with something, be it depression, maybe some sickness, or whatever mental state it is that you're experiencing, or physical state, you can be sure that you're not alone in your suffering, right? You can be sure of that. And you also have the practice. You know how to breathe, you know how to smile to yourself. And in that moment, you can give rise to compassion for all of those people that maybe right in that present moment, are experiencing some very similar, if not the same, feeling at the same time. But maybe they don't have the practice to be able to embrace that feeling. And you're able to connect with, there is other suffering as well as mine, and so your suffering no longer becomes an individual thing, and your practice of taking care and embracing yourself becomes also one of embracing not just you but other people that are suffering. And the insights that you gain when you go through a suffering also then is something you can be of benefit to, because you've gone through it and then many people are still going through it. So one big insight comes from the insight that our suffering is not individual. Another, and that can help us let go of the kind of painful thing about suffering is sometimes we really take it personally, yeah? And so that we talk about what we call the second arrow, where you have the original suffering, but then you add another layer to that suffering with the way in which your attitude to it. Maybe you're judging yourself for having that suffering, maybe you have fear about that suffering, you don't want to face it, or maybe, you feel isolated and on your own with it, or something like that. So there can be, but these are what we call second arrows. And when those can be released, and the pain will be a lot less, because the actual original suffering, be it some illness or just whatever it is, some mental state, is actually then quite substantially less and possible to take care of. And you can see it more clearly as well. So it's a kind of getting perspective on things. And another way to get a perspective is also to remember that you are much more than that suffering. Because the insight of interbeing, the insight that we get from emptiness and signlessness, lets us know we're not separate self, that we belong to the universe, and that you can find the whole cosmos in this body. One of our bodies is the cosmos, and we are the cosmos, and we find the infinity inside as well as outside. So to identify and home in and say, this suffering is me, I am this suffering. Well, it's partly true, it's part of you. But you can practice in such a way as to make it, to recognize in the context that you're much more than that. You're much more, for instance, you're much more than one emotion. So you don't have to be caught by one emotion and think this is it. And, this is, yeah. There was so when we are caught by an emotion and it feels overwhelming, we remember impermanence. We remember that this too will pass. And we remember that it's not just my suffering, and that I am more than this suffering. And I can go through, all I have to do is stay with it. And I can go through this. And with mindfulness energy, I can embrace. And things will change. And if I need help, we have the Sangha. We have the Sangha, the collective energy. You have a spiritual friend somewhere who can hold your hand, who can go for a walk with you. Or maybe nature, to go for a walk on your own in nature is enough for you. You get the love and the embrace of the nature to help you take care of your emotion, of your suffering. There is, just to end, I'd like to mention one other event in the UK that we had, was in Manchester. We went and we had a peace walk in the city, and there was myself, there was Sister Donyim, Sister Tamoy, Brother Hui Tang, and we had the Stockport Manchester Sangha in the UK, and we organised a peace walk. And we didn't know, but it turned out to be the 100th day after there had been a bombing in the city, which had really shaken the city. The people of Manchester, in fact, had responded very, very beautifully to that situation. They practiced non-anger, so they were already practicing well without the practice. What we went to offer that day was just to put some energy of peace down in the city. And we also we didn't know it was the 100th day, so it was kind of a significant. We were very well aware that the city had gone through that trauma. So we were not a huge group, but we walked through the city of Manchester, and we did our best to offer peace with each step to the city and to the people. And we arrived at the place where St. Anne's Square, where they put flowers. A lot of the people of the city put flowers down after the event to express their grief and express their love. And there was a fountain, I think it was made from granite, of a lotus fountain, and we stopped there in St. Anne's Square, and we put some flowers in the water around the fountain. And we had 3 bells, and as it happened, the church bell sounded at the same time, so it was a very beautiful moment. And as it happened, somebody had a microphone, and I was invited to say some words, and I asked Thai to help me at that moment because I wasn't expecting. And so the story that came to my mind was the one of Thai when he was helping the Vietnamese boat people, and there'd been an attack of pirates who had been very violent. I mean, this was not just one incident, but there was one incident that's referred to, and where a little girl was raped and people were killed on the boat and they drowned. The girl threw herself off the boat, etc. It was a tragedy. And at that time, Thai was very felt anger arise, and of course the obvious object of the anger was the pirate that had killed and raped the girl. But he practiced that night to see that he too, given certain causes and conditions, could have been that pirate. And that allowed him to touch compassion for the pirate also, for the person who had done the violence. So I also shared that story in relation to the Manchester bombing, and the people, as well as everybody that was a victim of the bombing and the trauma, because whether they were injured or not, physically everybody was injured in one way, and that also the people that get into a situation where they express their suffering in that way. And so we sang. I then sang the song "Please Call Me by My True Names," because Thai's poem that he wrote with that insight is "Please Call Me by My True Names," which is also the title of the book of his poetry. And I think it's also to let go of the resentment and the hatred that we can sometimes have towards the other that is causing harm, be it our husband, or be it a terrorist, or be it can be anybody, is to recognize their suffering as well, and to see that there are always causes and conditions which give rise to any situation, and that if we understand the causes and conditions well enough, the understanding arises in our heart, and we are able to let go of our anger, our hatred. So, to close, would you sing with me, Please Call Me By My True Names? Those of you know. My joy's like spring so warm, it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain's like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so high and laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up and the door